interest-free? Just a couple people? So all the rest of you don't want to live? Okay. Well, throughout history, there's been the fountain of youth. There's always some promise by, I think, charlatans often that we could live forever, or even in Silicon Valley, there are people working on anti-aging mechanisms, but I'm not sure, that could be a nightmare. But in a way, the Buddha promised us more life. But he promised it in a different way than just making our lives 140 years instead of 70. And I asked my best friend, ChatGPT, okay? And as I mentioned last week, as I get older and I get forgetful of names or words, within the normal range of forgetfulness. And I'm a retired therapist, so I sort of know that my cognitive decline is within the normal range. But ChatGPT has become my best friend, because if I can't think of something, if I can describe it, then AI in seconds gives me the answer. So I thought it'd be interesting, what would ChatGPT tell us about what the Buddha taught about sense experience? That's what really we're focused on in our training here. And ChatGPT, and I call him a he, but we could call him a she or they, whatever preference you have, came up with accurate information. It comes out of the Satipatthana Sutta, which is the suttas often called the four foundations of mindfulness that the Buddha taught. And here's what my friend ChatGPT said about the role of the senses in mindfulness. The Buddha, and this is ChatGPT, the Buddha emphasizes that mindfulness should extend to all sensory experiences. And as an aside, not just the breath, okay? We tend to use the breath as the most common sense anchor, but the Buddha said that it can extend to all sense experience. Not just mental objects like thoughts or emotions, and this includes awareness of sights, sounds, tastes, touches, smells, and the mind itself. Within Buddhist psychology, the mind is also a sense organ. The goal, this is the Buddha's, it's a summary of the Buddha's teaching by ChatGPT. The goal is to develop equanimity and insight by being fully present, whatever arises in any of the senses, allowing for deep insight into the nature of our experience. So the Buddha himself said, as best we can see the record, that we can use any sense experience to be mindful. So what about this question of, would you be interested if somebody could promise you more life? Well, the Buddha promised that. He didn't promise that we could live double the years we have, lifespan, but he promised that we could be more present for whatever life we have here. And when you think about it, when you talk about enjoying your life, it's those experiences of tasting that meal you love, hearing that music that really brings you alive, feeling the touch of a loved one, or it could just be feeling the touch of working out that enlivens you. We live in our sense experience. And so mindfulness skills can help us be more fully present for the life we have now. So my teacher, Shinzen Yang, he often says, what if instead of 60 years, somebody could promise you 120 years of life? And then he qualifies it by saying, not that you would live 120, but in the 60 years, you would have so much more life experience that it would be the equivalent of 2 lifetimes. So what gets in the way of our normal way of experiencing life? And that's our inability to be present or pay attention. Last week I quoted this not very reliable study, but it's a funny one. Does anybody remember what the average attention span of a goldfish is? Or I mentioned it last week.
Longer than a human.
Yeah, longer, exactly.
I don't remember how long. But
yeah, well, supposedly, again, this study is not, it's a little study, it may not be reliable, but it's fun. Yeah, so they found that a goldfish has an average attention span of 12 seconds. And since 2022, the average attention span of a human is slipped to 9 seconds. 9 seconds. So, with social media, with our busy lives, with all the stuff going on, our attention is constantly shifting and pulled in all kinds of directions, and we don't fully appreciate what's right before us. Now, there is a reliable study. It's the Killingsworth Guild study that was done some years ago. And what they did, I was actually a subject in the study for several years. And what they did is 3 times a day, my cell phone would go off, text, and they would ask me right away, what are you doing? And are you paying attention to what you're doing or something else? And then there were a series of other questions. And the study concluded after, it was done at Harvard initially, the study concluded after all those study subjects reported, after a number of years, they concluded that the average human is only paying attention 47% of the time. And if you look at your own experience, where's the mind most of the time? Or at least half the time. It's somewhere else, right? So our practice, using what the Buddha taught us, that we can use any sense experience to create mindfulness. The Buddha taught us that we can have more life and appreciate more. And that's really, as I suggested in previous classes, that's really the reason, one of the reasons that we practice. Not just to become a good meditator, because, the joke is if sitting and meditating were the only goal, chickens would be enlightened, right? Because they just sit there. So the goal is to practice to have more life. So let's do before we do, let's do a little experiment, okay, with our minds. And we'll do just a few minutes. And I'll give you a little bit of instruction, okay? And you can do this with eyes open or closed, whatever you're comfortable with. And if you want to just assume a posture for meditating, which is usually to lengthen the spine, it kind of alerts, the body alerts the mind to pay attention. And then relax the jaw and relax the shoulders. So lengthening and loosening as a way to be present. Again, with eyes open or closed. And just bring your awareness to whatever you're experiencing right now. So you might be noticing sounds. You might be noticing something you see. Your eyes are closed. There's a dark mental screen there. You might notice something, a feeling in your body. You might notice thinking. Maybe there's images, or you can hear yourself when you think. And I'll be quiet now and just allow your attention, your awareness, to notice whatever you're experiencing. Let's do one more minute of just being present to what you're experiencing. Okay, good job, good work. So, would anybody like to share what you experienced? Robert?
I was using the see, hear, feel technique that you taught us, so just seeing what was in front of me, hearing sounds, and feeling body, but also I kept feeling the cool air.
Yeah, great, great. How about others? Yes?
I was feeling a large open space in the upper chest, as well as the sounds and the cool air coming in with breathing.
Great, excellent. How about others? Yes?
I was feeling my body kind of relaxing, which is ironic to say, rushed over it for mindfulness.
So you felt relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is ironic because you rushed over. Yeah.
For mindfulness.
Yeah, for mindfulness. Yeah, excellent, excellent. And that's really what we're going to talk about tonight, is that experience of restfulness in the body can be an anchor. So that's great. Yeah. Anybody else want to share? How many people are aware of thoughts, thinking? Yeah, almost everybody. Okay. Yeah. Why is that?
It never shuts off.
Yeah, it doesn't shut off. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, and mindfulness, again, what the Buddha taught was we can use any sense experience to be present. We can use it as an anchor. So, in this form that I teach, called Unified Mindfulness, there's no distractions. And that's a little different than other forms of meditation. If you use the breath as an anchor, which is certainly a great way to practice, but if the mind wanders, the attention wanders, then we consider that somewhat of a distraction and we just come back, right? Well, in this form, and again, based on what the Buddha taught, is that anything you experienced, you were being mindful. Now, sometimes when I teach beginning classes, somebody will raise their hand and say, I couldn't do what you instructed. And I'll say, what happened? Well, I couldn't just be focused. I kept drifting off to other things. And then I ask the question, and I qualify it by saying, I'm not being a smart aleck, but how did you know? How did you know your mind wandered? How did you know you were thinking? Almost everybody raised their hands. Well, the way you knew was there was a moment of mindfulness. So maybe you were thinking about what happened before you got here tonight, kind of lost in that thought. And there may have been a moment where you recognized that you were thinking. And that is the mindful moment. And that's really what we do to train, and the techniques we use to just notice where the mind is going and being aware, not to be caught by the mind as telling us where to go, but that we can take, in a sense, command of our minds, not by forcing ourselves what we're going to experience, but just being aware. And it's often described as that moment when you recognize that you are having an experience. That little moment is the freedom that mindfulness brings as well. So let's do a little quiz so we can help the people who are new tonight catch up. What are the 3 labels that we use for all sense experience in this model that we've been working with the last 2 weeks? What are the 3 labels? Anybody remember? Yeah.
Isn't it see, hear, feel?
Yep, see, hear, feel. Exactly. Robin referenced it as well. So to make things simple, we use just 3 labels for our experience, whatever we're going to experience. Now, many people would say, well, wait a minute, we're experiencing a lot more than just seeing, hearing, and feeling, right? But that includes visual thoughts. Like right now, picture your favorite food. I've got a bowl of ice cream. Okay, I can picture it. Can you picture your favorite food? Well, you can just label that C, so that when you have a visual thought, you can be aware of it by just labeling it, okay? And you can use the label C. Same way with hear. We hear sounds. Hear the sounds out. But we also are chattering all day long to ourselves. That's auditory thinking. So thinking can be visual or auditory. And you can experience it right now. Recite your phone number to yourself silently. I remember it, and I can hear it, right? So thinking, you can actually, in a way, be more present to your thinking by being able to label it, see or hear, much less out in the world. We can see objects, we can hear sounds, and then feel. It relates to what you experience, that you can feel sensations in your body, pleasant and unpleasant, but you can also feel emotions. And a good example is that when we have a strong emotion of anger or sadness or love, we can label those emotions as feel as well. So, in a simple but seemingly complicated way, we can see out objects in the room, in the environment. We can see in our visual thoughts, images that pop up and disappear when we think. Hear out all the sounds around us. We can hear in all the chatter we're doing that we call thinking, okay? And same way with feel. We can feel out, meaning our bodies, sensations in the body, touch, smell, taste. We'll consider that all feel. And then we can feel in as well. But using very simply these 3 labels. Any questions about that? Does that make sense?
When you're saying feel in, you're referring to emotions, is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, feel in is really any emotional bodily experience as well. So this very simple way, based on what the Buddha taught, which is that we can be aware and mindful of any sense experience, but once we got some research from cognitive science, and we now know better how the mind works in relation to the senses, then this form of mindfulness developed to help us be more specific and precise about what we're experiencing. Yes?
How do you integrate just being an observer of all these things versus being it is part of you? Because, I'm not really a third person observer, but at the same time I am.
Right, yeah. So the question is, how do you integrate it? Well, you just practice. You get used to naming your experience, and then at some point, and we all experience this, when you eat a meal that you absolutely love, there are moments where you're just immersed in the experience, right? You're just tasting, but you're not thinking about it, you're enjoying it. So that's what happens when we really learn to practice mindfulness. We become, in a sense, our experience. And that's when the joy really takes place. So we can simply label any human experience. And I always challenge, nobody's ever come up, well, people sometimes come up with things. Can you think of any human experience that you can't label, see, hear, or feel? Is there any experience that we haven't covered? Nope, nobody ever comes up with one. It really is a way to totally capture everything we experience. Falling asleep at night, that kind of dreamy state, there's a moment where you're kind of aware of that, and then you go out, right? Well, you could be mindful that maybe is a feel as you're laying in bed. You might be having some thoughts ending the day. That can be a hear-in as you're telling yourself the stories, or see-in as you're having the images. So there's a way to describe any experience, and the more we can be precise, the more we can actually be mindful, okay? Okay, so lastly, and then I'll stop talking too much, and the heart of this is practice. You experiencing this, that's what counts. Lastly, see, hear, feel. But then we have some tools we call noting and labeling. Noting is very simply, and I'll do a little guidance as we meditate. Noting is just spend those few seconds really paying attention to what we're experiencing. If our attention span now is 9 seconds, it's very likely we're always flipping between, they call that attention switching. People say, oh, I can multitask. Well, we can't. It's attention switching. And you can do it very quickly, particularly since the mind is so speedy. But it's really not paying attention to any particular thing. It's moving. It's the difference between glancing at a tree and really looking at the tree, really seeing the tree. So what we do in noting, we consciously, intentionally spend just a few seconds on whatever we're experiencing. And then if you want, you can label it, see, hear, or feel. And that has a way of connecting us to our experience. Okay? So let's go ahead and do it. And then we'll see what your experience is, okay? And I'll do some guidance around see, hear, feel as a practice. We'll do about 10 minutes. Okay? So if you want to assume a mindfulness posture that's comfortable but alert, so maybe lengthening the spine. You can do this with eyes open or closed, and relaxing the jaw, relaxing the shoulders. And see if you can meet that spot where the relaxation and the attention, the lengthening of the body meet, there's a spot. And now allow your attention to move freely. Just let it go wherever it wants to go. And then when you notice where it lands, decide, is it see, hear, or feel? Spend a few seconds focusing in on whatever you're experiencing. Maybe use the label, see, hear, or feel, and then let it go and notice where the mind goes next. And it's going to go pretty quick. You might be seeing or hearing or feeling. And gently, you might try to make your noting and labeling at a steady, gentle pace. So it might sound like this. This is what I'm experiencing right now. Feel, hear, see, feel, do that at your own pace. If the attention goes back to the same experience more than once, we call that re-noting. You just label it again. It's okay. won't be able to note and label everything you experience. That's okay. Just be gentle with yourself and note what you can, and maybe label it. See, hear, or feel. If you find you've gotten lost in thought, the moment you recognize that, label it, see or hear, and then let it go and open up to whatever comes next. Let's do about 2 more minutes of see, hear, feel. Okay, good job, everybody. Just take a moment to bring attention back into the room if it was somewhere else. So what happened? Anybody want to share your experience?
Is it okay if I share that I'm frustrated?
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
So I have a regular meditation practice, so I have a sense of familiarity with when I feel I'm meditating or present or mindful.
Yes.
So I had an intrusive thought about I'm taking a trip and booking the place to stay. And I was labeling it, I'm an auditory thinker, but then I felt a very strong tension, clenching in my throat.
Mm-hmm.
And it disturbed me so much that then I couldn't let go of this thought about book the place to stay. And so I had, and again, I'm careful not to use judging words about it, but
Yeah.
after noting the feeling, I felt less meditative of what I'm familiar with
Yes.
as a meditative state of my practice.
Yeah. What, if I may ask, what do you use as an anchor? You
Breath.
use the breath.
Breath and also personally, I really like soft focus of the eyes. That really helps me a lot.
Yeah.
I also try to very what I consider active listening, but which doesn't mean listening to a specific noise, but just knowing that there are sounds around me.
Right.
Which is a big part of where I learned to meditate. I always share this, and if will you indulge me for a second, I
Sure.
should share an anecdote.
Yeah.
Because I learned to meditate in New York City in a very industrial area that still has like literally the last rent by the hour hotel on it. And so you were never going to get quiet. So our training was to be very present in the hearing, because if you weren't, it just, so I have a pattern, and it does not actually include this noting of feeling.
Right.
And that really threw me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, as you describe your meditation experience, you're using different senses, right? You know, when we get stuck, there's a number of things we can do. One thing you could do is just go back to the breath or switch senses. Anytime we get stuck, that means that in a way we're clinging to the experience. And something I haven't mentioned, but we've talked about in previous classes, that the three mental muscles that we're using in meditation are concentration, we're choosing what to pay attention to. Clarity is we just know the difference between seeing, hearing, and feeling. We can actually track our experience. But maybe the most important mental muscle is equanimity. That ability to just not cling or be caught, either push away or hang on. So I think, you know, there's a number of ways you could work with that. One is just begin to label and notice what that frustration feels like. Just be present to it. Or switch your attention. Be perfectly okay to move to the breath because you're used to that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it sounds, the way you described it, it sounds like you were being very mindful of different sense experiences as well. So, good job. Good job. How about others? Anybody else want to share what happened? Be brave enough. How many people were aware of thoughts? Yeah, okay. Yeah. And again, I'm not being a smart aleck, but how did you know there's a moment where you were aware, you were thinking, right? So you're being mindful. How about, yes?
So it was interesting because I was like, okay, I am a regular meditator and I use breath as meditation too. So this time I was like, okay, close my eyes, you know, start breathing, and I feel, and then I got clinging to the feeling, and I'm like, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna go to my breath. So I was switching to my breath to hear it, so auditory hearing. And it's somewhere in my mind go, but you're not really covering vision. And, and I'm an eye doctor, so that's even more hilarious. And I was like, okay, then you use my vision to fix how I'm feeling because I'm a little tense here. Yeah. So I started visualizing. So it was interesting because it was bouncing back and forth. Yeah. But it was kind of solve a problem. Yeah. Like how do I relax? Yeah. Which is even more ironic because it's just me.
Well, and that's why we need equanimity. Is that at some point we begin to just let whatever's happening happen, and we're noticing it and we're labeling it. And it's perfectly okay to choose what sense experience to pay attention to. You know, when you're having a meal, or you're watching a movie, or you're listening to music, it's really good to have more life by choosing to rest the attention on what it is we want to experience. That's okay too. But the difference is that we can keep focused on that so we can really appreciate it. That's really what the mindfulness is about. So if this practice we just did was difficult, it usually is at the beginning because we're trying to make something happen. And if you, at some point, and you can go through your day, take small moments where you can ask yourself, am I seeing, hearing, or feeling right now? And label it. And what will happen is you're increasing your ability to be present and to be mindful as well. And this, the labeling and the noting just give you some tools to not get lost in thought or to get lost in the experience. Now, what Ziggy brought up is that we talked about looking at the difference between restful and active sense experience. And, I think many, if not most people, initially come to meditation to calm down, right? How many people want to do that, okay? Yeah, we want to have tools to be able to calm down, focus, and have a little tranquility in our life. So one way to think about our sense experience is it's either active or it's restful within see, hear, feel, okay? So maybe one of the easiest ways to access that experience is by feel. So in other words, in your body at any moment, and this is really a good tool for daily life, in your body at any moment there are restful experiences going on and active experiences. We just don't always notice it. So let me do a guided meditation now where we can experience that, okay? And this is a way that you can really calm down. And as you get good at it, you can do it anywhere, anytime. So if you want to assume your mindfulness posture, whatever's best for you. And it's perfectly fine to have eyes open or closed. It might be a little easier with eyes closed. And just bring your attention into your body. And notice any sensations you're feeling in the body. It could be your feet resting on the floor, your hands resting in your lap. Just be aware of any sensations in the body. And now an active sensation can be tightening your fist right now. Just go ahead and feel that. You can feel that's an active sensation. You're making something happening. And now, in a gentle way, release your hand and feel the difference. Clenching the fist tightly, active, and releasing the fist, restful. And then scanning the body, anything you're feeling, notice if there's any tension in your body, that would be active. And notice any places in the body that are just restful. They may be kind of feel neutral or even pleasant. And that would be restful. So let's spend just a couple minutes being aware of those two different experiences. One is active, maybe tense, and the other may be restful or pleasant. If you're aware of your breathing, just notice the end of the out-breath can be a restful sensation, so letting go. And you can bring your attention to any restful experience and rest your attention there. If you're aware of an active sensation, let's say tension in the shoulders, you might tighten your shoulders and then loosen. Tighten and loosen. And then experience the restful sensation of letting go. Now I'd invite you to bring your attention to your breath, allowing the natural rhythm of in and out. And notice the breath coming into the body and then out as you breathe out. And bring your attention to the end of the out-breath. And you might notice how letting go. And you might be feeling out restful sensation as you let go of the breath. And you can let that experience of rest spread throughout your body. Allow it to spread. Let's do 2 more minutes. this practice of restfulness, feel rest. Okay, good work. Good job, everybody. So what was your experience? Anybody want to share?
Falling asleep.
Fall asleep, okay, yeah. Well, you must have been rested if you could fall asleep. Letting go, okay, great. How about others? Did you notice that, Robin? Yeah.
So if you're noticing restful or active, are you labeling that noticing? No.
No.
Okay.
Well, you could. You could use the label see, hear, or feel, but the more important thing is you are experiencing the restfulness, and you can actually focus on that.
So just experience it, don't label it.
Yeah.
Or note it.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to note it because you're bringing your attention to it, and the reason I like using the end of the breath, because at some point as you keep focused on that letting go of the breath, it can spread to a restfulness in the whole body. And the whole point of this practice is as you get good at noticing the difference between your active sensations and your restful sensations, you can always go there, particularly with feel, rest. You're at work in a meeting and you feel tense. You can bring your attention to whatever in your body is restful, and you rest your attention there. And it has a way of spreading that you may find your whole body begins to relax. So you don't have to run out of the room or out of the meeting to feel better. You can actually, and nobody even knows you're doing it, you can actually have your eyes open. And you bring your awareness to that restful experience. So, what we know is that there's always rest going on in the body. We just tend to not notice it. What we notice is tension, difficult emotions. That's what captures pain, discomfort. That's what captures our attention. But as we practice and we can actually tune in to the restful experiences, we can change our whole experience. How many people did experience some rest? Okay, great, excellent. And you want to remember what you experienced, and you want to look for that in your daily life. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. Does that make sense? So questions, comments, objections, is how we say. Yes?
Can you explain what you meant by being stuck? That concept, or
Being stuck?
yeah, what is that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's what you shared. If you have an intention that I'm supposed to be focused on this, and I'm not, and you're fighting with yourself, that fight is the getting stuck. Does that make sense? Like when we just did feel rest. Well, I'm supposed to be feeling rest, but I'm not. Oh, then I'm doing something wrong. And you start to fight with yourself. And that's when you can just shift focus to another sense object, for example. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because ultimately, the mind is going to go where it wants to go. To some degree, we can direct it. But, we can't force the mind to do what we want. We have to more gently train it and then work with it as well. Other questions or comments before we stop?
Could you repeat the 3 mental
Skills, mental muscles.
Mental
Yeah.
muscles.
So, and actually, one of the definitions of mindfulness is the 3 mental muscles or skills working together. It's a definition of mindfulness. First is concentration. It's just that ability to choose what to pay attention to. That's big. So when you were just focusing, let's say, some of the time on rest, you were using concentration. You were choosing what to pay attention to. And the more you practice, the better you get. Second is clarity, which is just really knowing the details of what you're experiencing. If you listen to a sound, the sound of the outside right now, if you really listen, it's not just one sound, it's a whole bunch of sounds. So that's clarity. And then the third is equanimity. It's that we don't have to push away any experience, we don't have to hold on. We can just be open to whatever we're experiencing, and then we're really present. Does that make sense? Yes?
What's the difference between concentration and clarity? Because when we're saying focusing on sounds, and concentrating on sounds, but is clarity more like discernment? Like kind of being aware of the differences?
The sound right now, it was, if you really listen to that, it was more than just one sound, right? With clarity, you notice, it went, and it moved away. So clarity is it really just enriches our experience. It's a skill as well. And we're at 8 o'clock, and I don't think Maggie's here. She was going to read the thing they always read at the end.
She was here when I walked in.
Was she? Okay.
We all know it.
We all know, you heard it. That's right. We're not teachers, gurus, we're just practitioners sharing, and there's lots of stuff going on here. So if you're new to this community, check out all the things in all the different
sandwiches tomorrow.
What's that?
So they're making sandwiches tomorrow.
Right, food redistribution.
Yes, the food distributions tomorrow night. Is there a list of activities?
Yeah.
It's on the wall.
Okay, great.
Redistribution's at 4:30.
4:30. Okay, great. Well, listen, thank you so much. Next week, we're going to do a little recap, but then I'm also going to focus on how do we bring all this stuff to daily life. If mindfulness is not just sitting for 30 minutes every day, and that's a training, but can we be training when we're living life? And how do we do that? Because, most of the time we're out there doing things. And how to make our life our practice. That's what we're going to focus on for the final 4-week journey. Okay? So thank you so much for your good attention.